Hello, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to today's Brownback session. We have Dr. Ahmed bin Aid. We'll just address him as Ben. He is the Department Chair of Computer Science at Talladega College, which is a private historically Black college university in Alabama. It's one of the oldest universities in Alabama. Ben comes with a variety of experience from industry and government here in the United States and in Tunisia. Ben, today I want you to discuss cybersecurity technologies in Tunisia. A number of our students have the ability to travel and do numerous things in the African continent, and they're always wondering about how is cybersecurity done in other nations. And I think tonight will be great because students will get to hear from your perspective and hear how technology and cybersecurity use occurs in Tunisia. So, Ben, one of the questions is, what are the key cybersecurity challenges and threats facing Tunisia, and how is the government and or industry addressing them?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this invitation to talk about Tunisia and to just shed some light on the issues of cybersecurity addressing the country and the African nations. So, just to begin, let's have an introduction. So maybe some of the students do not really know where Tunisia is or any history. So Tunisia is basically a Northern African nation. It's located in North Africa. Uh, most most of the Tunisian education system is we speak Arabic and French. So the education system is mostly in French. And what people speak on the street, like the native language will be Arabic mixed with a little bit of French as a dialect. That's the country. So when we talk about cybersecurity and information technology in the country, we are considered one of the first nations that adopted laws, cybersecurity laws, and electronic commerce laws. And I'm talking about the late 1990. That's where we started. Like the government started talking about this issue, and they started addressing the issue and drafting laws and acts about these issues. At that time, we did not really the whole nation was not really introduced to technology. But what the government did, um, to be honest, at that time we lived in a dictatorship in the 90s and 80s, and that dictatorship did many bad things, politically speaking. But when it comes to technology, they worked very well on educating people and just introducing computers and technology to students. Uh, so as a grown up, I was able to get computers in the 90s and the early 2000. So it was introduced basically in every high school and every school. So we grow up using those computers. In high school, for example, we worked on programming languages, which is, and I'm talking about the 2000. I was in high school in 2000. So in 2000, we were working on programming, which is, I don't think it happens here in the States, right? So I don't think at that time people were introduced to programming languages. In high school, we did Pascal, we did C, and it wasn't really advanced, but we had a good exposure on technology. That's to just give an idea about the landscape of the country and the education. And what that did is everyone growing up and in that era basically became an engineer, a computer engineer, because we were very, very exposed. And what that rose is problems with cybersecurity, just because everyone has computer, everyone used. Also, when we talk about the credit card part, so the credit card part was not introduced to Tunisia until late, I would say. It became popular, let's say, in 2005 to 6. So that's where it became popular. But what the government did before that, and introduced the credit cards to students. So basically, to pay tuition in Tunisia, since 1998, I believe, you will have to use what we call an e-dinar, which is uh, basically electronic currency. So you go to the post office, buy this credit card loaded with money. So it's like a prepaid card to pay your tuition. So you will not be able to pay your tuition in cash. And that's what introduced electronic payment to the population. So at that time, only students are using electronic payment, which was the first introduction to electronic payments in Tunisia, which is now it's different. Now it's popular, so everyone is using credit cards and using electronic payments, but it was not back then. Okay, so that's starting the cybersecurity issue, because the first cards to be hacked are the one that used by students to pay tuitions. That's the cards that got hacked at that time, and that's where cyber criminals got to start their career, let's say. So that's just to give you a history about the country and how we started, when did the technology start and all this stuff. So the problem now, let's go to the problem. So one of the biggest problem that we got in early 2000 is the lack of laws. So we did not have any law about cyber criminals. So basically, if you hack somebody's card, you're not going to go to jail. Nothing is going to happen to you, just because there is no laws about these issues. So what happened in 2000, we introduced the Electronic Identity Exchange E-commerce Act of 2000, and that's basically the first, I believe it's the first law that got drafted in the Arab world and in Africa. It was in 2000. And also we had the e-commerce law. And then that time, in the 2000, we did not have any e-commerce. It just, we had the law. That's the only thing. So we were very, theoretically speaking, we were advanced. But when we talk about what's happening on the ground, we did not have any electronic commerce. We just have the law. So basically nothing to hack those electronically. The first problems we got with cybersecurity was in 2000, around 2009. So 2009, a lot of groups, they start basically hacktivism, and they performed the denial of service attack on most of the government websites. So many government websites, they were shut down just because a denial of service attack. And that was a hacktivism group. They attacked the government because at that time it was a dictatorship. So basically they were trying to, because of course they cannot say anything on the public because they will go to jail. So they tried, or they started their activism online. And that's where the government is becoming aware and trying developing those laws that they look perfect and they look good, but they developed those laws just to protect the government and I would say the image of the government at that time. And then we had a revolution in 2011, and this revolution basically took the dictatorship down and brought freedom to the country. And that's where cybersecurity became basically for the government became a subject that they need to work on, because we had many groups, they start hacking into credit cards that people were using. That's one. Also, we had many fraud attempts, especially with e-commerce, because e-commerce became a popular thing in about like 2014, 2015. That's when it became something. But there is a lot of fraud, there is a lot of problems, because technologically speaking, we were not like the population was not used to all this technology and shopping online, and we did not have the trust. You know, when you come from a country that has a dictatorship, so people don't really have trust on anything that the government does, right? So if the government asks you to do say that the electronic commerce is safe, you don't really trust it. You want to just go to the store and buy. But that changed now. Uh, uh, we stopped at e-commerce. And that of course changed now. So now we have a developed e-commerce law that was changed in 2009, and it was also worked on in 2014 by the government, and became commerce electronic commerce began to be a big economical actor at this time.
So Ben, I forgot to, I keep forgetting that many times that people may be unfamiliar with where Tunisia is and stuff like that. So for those that don't have a map, to the east is Libya, to the west is Algeria, and then I believe part of Libya is to the south, and below that is Niger, and then you have Nigeria. So it's a strategic point. Is right on the, I believe, is it Mediterranean?
Yes.
Yes, right in the Mediterranean. And you know, Tunisia has a lot of the most liberal laws in the Arab world. It is the only country where Muslim women can marry non-Muslim men and still retain right to their properties and stuff like that. There is also a number of religions that live pretty much in freedom. You know, they coexist. Arabs, Jews, Christians live together. And it's one of the cheapest countries in the world to actually vacation at as well. I do want to mention that you guys do have a robust education system. So you mentioned that the educational system is in French. How are you introduced into technology? Like, let's talk about like SUPCOM and the other institutions that are feeding that. How are the IT and cybersecurity engineering programs developed, and how do they address the needs of the community?
All right, that's a good question. So to become with, so our system, our higher education system is in French. So most of the technology, most of the programs that we have are developed in French, and they're very similar to those programs that you find in French universities. So one of the problems that I see is that French education. So most of the Tunisian engineers, they do not have access to English. So as French as a second language, so most of those engineers, when they graduate, because the economy in Tunisia is at the worst now. So you're right, it's one of the cheapest place to do a vacation at, but those who graduate with an engineering degree, those smart students that graduate with engineering degree, they cannot really find any job, and they cannot really use their knowledge in the country, just because it's the economy is very tough right now. So that's one of the issues. Since 2015, there is 60, I think it's 60,000 engineer left the country since 2015. 60,000, that's a lot for a country that has like 10 million population. So we're just 10 million. And you get like 60,000, and that's like about 10,000 engineer leaving the country every year or so. So that's a lot. So they're leaving the country mostly to Europe just because the language barrier. So they cannot really, so most of the time they go to France just because they know the culture, they know the language, and that's the first destination for IT Tunisian engineers. And of course, they don't have access, or they don't know about the programs in the States. Nobody really goes to US universities just because they don't have access, they don't know the language, they probably don't have the information. and that's a big issue for me. In 2010, the government started a new school. It's called Tunis Business School, and this school adopted the American system. So basically, they offer a bachelor degree, a master degree in business information systems, uh, and they have a bachelor degree in information systems. They have a master in business information systems, and I think now they're developing a PhD program, and it's totally in English. So the whole program is taught in English. The other universities like Subcom, EZCom, they're mostly in French with some English. So now they introduced some English courses just to get the students, give them more freedom to go to other countries, not just leave for France. Because the education we do in Tunisia is very, very competitive. So we do a lot of theory, a lot of engineering courses, a lot of programming languages. So those students who graduate with a bachelor degree in Tunisia, they're very competitive. So they can work basically anywhere in the world, but we still have that language barrier. They cannot work for English speaking companies just because they're not fluent in English. And I think that thing is changing, just because now also we have many private universities, they used English for instruction, especially for engineering and IT program. So that's slowly changing.
So there's a question, and the question is, how do you stay updated on the latest cybersecurity trends or policies in Tunisia?
So when we talk about policies, if are you talking about laws and government policies?
Yes.
Okay, so the problem is now that we have a political crisis. So the government is basically doing nothing. So they stopped doing policies, they stopped doing everything. So that's one of the problem. We did not have any updates on those laws or policies since, I would say, the 2009. So basically everything is on hold, and that's a problem. That's a big issue, because the here in America, when you talk about cybersecurity, you always talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability, right? Those are very uh, sacred, let's say. So the system has to be available, has to have the right information, and it has to be you have to have confidentiality on it, right? But in Tunisia, the problem with the government, if they have a problem or if they have any attacks against their database or against their system, they'll just shut down the whole thing. So they'll shut down the whole thing, and there is no system anymore. So it's not uncommon in Tunisia to go to the bank trying to withdraw money, and they'll be like, okay, the system is down. So as soon as they get any attacks or any attempt or anything like suspicious, what they will do, they will shut down the whole system, which is very it doesn't happen here, just because for them not to do the right work. So what they do is just trying to protect their system by shutting down the whole thing, which is I feel is it should not be that way.
Now, the other thing is, in the States, we have agencies to educate the public and look out for cybersecurity issues. Is there certain or such agencies in Tunisia?
We have an agency called Agence Nationale de Sécurité Informatique, which is we call ANC, and it's known to be NC, ANSI, and that's supposed to be the agency that take care of all the cybersecurity. It's the one that gives you give advice to those companies. It gives advice to the governmental entity, and it supervise basically all the attacks coming to the country and where they're coming from, and also it gives advice to banks, and private sector. It's not just for government agency. It does a good job. It has many good engineers, good people that are working on these issues. But the problem is, since 2014, all the good engineers, they're leaving. So basically, the agency doesn't have enough money to keep their employees. So now it's in a big crisis that cannot keep professionals working for this agency just because they don't pay much. Just let me give you a number so that way you know what I'm talking about. So for a security engineer, cybersecurity engineer that works for the ANSI, they make about $600 to $700 a month. It's nothing. So that's why all of them they leave, and mostly they leave for France to make way more money than that. And I don't know how to fix this. Probably paying people more money, right? Which is very hard in Tunisia, just because the government have policies, and it's very hard to get that government to believe that you need to pay these people well so they can stay working for you. So now that agency, I had many internship with that agency in 2009, 2008, and they know many of the engineers working for that agency, and most of them they left. So the last known good engineer that I know very well left in 2017, I believe, and he left for Saudi Arabia, where he's making, I think, 10 or 12 times the amount he was making in Tunisia. The other one was a director in that agency, and he left for France. So basically, we're left with no engineers to work for those agencies, and that's one of the biggest issue they're facing right now.
Ben, I'm glad you bring that up because one of the best researchers I met when I was in Saudi was an individual from Tunisia, right?
Mhm.
He got his undergrad, I believe, in Tunisia. He did his PhD in France, and then he went to Riyadh to teach, right? To become a professor. Now he's basically running all their research and stuff like that. He does a lot of stuff in robot operating systems. Really brilliant guy. But that becomes the other thing because when I was there, a lot of people, I mean, your native tongue is Arabic, you speak French as well, and then a lot of the younger generation will speak English. And so if you have a country that won't pay its people, right, is you're not able to generate enough income, you have the option of going to almost anywhere in the world. Francophone, Anglophone, and Arabic. You can go pretty much wherever you want and ask for a price. And I think that becomes the issue where you have this great education system. However, the talent needs to stay within the country. Otherwise, you open yourself up to cyber attacks. Like, how are you going to defend against these particular attacks when the people who would help you defend, they're gone?
So one of the things, the younger generation have access to English. That's true. So now most engineers that they graduate this recent years, they will speak English, so they will be able to go anywhere. So they speak French, Arabic, and English, so they basically be able to go anywhere and work. But the thing is, not most of these people want to leave the country. So one of the biggest problems with with those engineers is the Tunisian law. So the Tunisian law is very strict and is very complicated. So that's one of the things. So if you want to have a startup, by the way, we had the Startup Act, which was introduced in 2019, I believe, which has made it a little easier, but it's still, there is a lot of risk. If you're trying to make a startup and things go south, you can find yourself in prison. So that's which is not the case in the state, not the case in Europe. So you should not go to jail for something that is civil, right? If you cannot pay your taxes or something happened, and you failed, you cannot pay the bank or whatever. In Tunisia, you can end up in jail. So that's why people are just, they don't want to risk it. So they want to go and start that company in Europe or the United States or anywhere in Asia, but not in Tunisia. So the law of Tunisia is very very strict, very, I would say, ancient, if that works. Like we have like laws from, I don't know, the 20s, and they're still in power. So it doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the issues that makes people leave and not invest in Tunisia is the law. And changing those laws are not easy. So they will take forever because we have a law bureaucracy, and it's not going to happen over time. For example, let's make it in Tunisia today. If you have cryptocurrency, if you have Bitcoin, you can end up in prison. Does this make sense? It does not make sense. So that's one of the issues. Do you have in Tunisia? We don't have PayPal. You cannot use PayPal in Tunisia. So if you're basically working for somebody else, or creating a website for somebody else in Europe, and he's like, you know what, I have to pay you. I'll send you money through PayPal. They're like, no, you cannot do that in Tunisia. And that's the drawbacks of the economy. So that's what making those young generation leave the country, is just having no economical freedom. So there is no economical freedom, and there is no way you can use PayPal. There is no way you can use Bitcoin. There is no way you can use any cryptocurrency. And it's not just that. So if you end up having cryptocurrency, you can end up in jail, because we have this act of 1936 or whatever that talks about foreign currency, and nationals are just allowed to have national currency, not dollars, euro, or any cryptocurrency. So that's one of the drawbacks that is not. I don't think it's gonna change any soon, just because there is a lot of bureaucracy.
So Ben, what about if I wanted to do cybersecurity consulting, right? Say I'm a Tunisian, I want to do cybersecurity consulting where I don't really want to risk in terms of a lot of money or capital for myself, but I just want to offer my services. Will I be able to work with neighboring countries easily, or is that pose a challenge as well?
That's you would be able to work for national companies easier, so that it will not pose any problem. But how many national companies do we have? The economy is not that big, and you would like to work for Europeans or neighboring country or African countries. If you do that, you end up having a problem with the government just because you are dealing with foreign currency. So if you're dealing with foreign currency, you're under the radar of the Tunisian government. And as I said, not everyone dealing with foreign currency could end up in prison. But if you do any mistake, or you don't pay enough taxes, or I don't know, could be an honest mistake, you can end up in prison just because you got paid from, I don't know, like any mistake you could, it's a risk to end up in prison, which is not this case in the United States or in any other country. So here, even if you do a mistake in your tax, what's going to happen? They'll ask, the IRS will get to you, like, you need to pay this much. That's it. You're not going to go to prison. But in Tunisia, it's a different case.
So Ben, so do I need to make sure that the other countries, if they're another country, right? We'll say we're dealing with Senegal, they need to pay me in dinars, Tunisian dinars. Is it that strict?
Yeah, so they have to go through the Central Bank of Tunisia and pay in dinars, yeah. Because
Okay.
you're not allowed to have any foreign currency. You're not allowed to get paid in foreign currency. But now let's be honest. So you know what Tunisians do? They will just get cards from there is a bank here. I think it's called Pioneer, and I think it's based in New York, and they will give Tunisian like uh, a debit card where you can charge it. So basically, if you do any service for someone in Senegal, they will pay you through that card. I think the bank is called Pioneer or something like that. And but you know what happened? If he pays you like $100, that bank will get like $30 or $40 as a fee. So that bank, I think it's based in New York. Let me check it. I think it's called Pioneer Bank.
That's
And
interesting. So they take a fourth to convert the money for you, where technically, like, if you bank through Bank of America or something like that, where they just have a small fee, but that fee there is outlandish. It's like 30 to 40%.
So yeah, so it's like 30 to 40% for each transaction. And you know what? They don't transfer the money to Tunisia. So you will have the bank, you will have the card, that debit card, and you can just use it from any ATM to get withdraw money. But withdrawing money, any amount, I think it's like $10 or $15 for any amount that you withdraw. Even if you withdraw $20, that bank will take $10 out of you. And any transaction, like any deposit that happened to your account, they get like 30 to 40%. And Tunisian, they still use that bank just because it's the only way for them to get paid from foreign companies. And there is no other way to do it and stay safe. Because if you do it through that bank, the government is not going to know about it. You just have a debit card that you use from an ATM to get your money. Even if they pay like 30 and 40% fees, they're okay with that just because they're not going to end up in prison.
So, I believe there's a new university, I think it's in Sousse, that's focused on artificial intelligence. Are you familiar with that institution at all?
Yeah, I know. I know one of the guys who started that university, and he's in California. He's working for IBM now, and it's the university is like five. It's five Americans, Tunisian Americans. They started the university in Sousse, and it's focusing on artificial intelligence. It's very new, by the way. I think it was opened like 2 years ago, so they did not have their first class yet of graduates.
Okay, but they're doing like bachelor's, master's, PhD.
They're doing no PhD. So the private sector in Tunisia is not allowed to do any PhDs. So they just do bachelor and master. So the PhD is just a government. You have to go to a public university for a PhD.
Gotcha. So, with studying something like artificial intelligence in Tunisia, is there anything to do with that once you get a credential like that?
Artificial intelligence?
Correct.
Um, no. That's sadly to say no. That there is no. You cannot do anything with artificial intelligence degree in Tunisia. But all these engineers, they go to schools so they can leave the country because that's basically an easy way. So if you get a degree in IT or any technology field, artificial intelligence, basically doors for other countries would be open because even in the States, there is not enough people to hire in those positions. So all the companies are looking for graduate and engineers, and there is not enough. But in Tunisia, it's the opposite way. So we have many graduate, sorry, we have many graduates, but we don't really have enough jobs, especially with the economy going downhill in the last like 4 to 5 years.
So Ben, we are so some people are familiar with, say you're leaving Nigeria or Kenya trying to go to the United States or Europe, how difficult it is. Is it easier for Tunisians to go to
Uh,
France?
it's easier for Tunisian to go to France. So basically, they just need to get an offer, a job offer from a company. And the thing is, the biggest companies in France, and most companies are very familiar with Tunisians. They know the education systems. They don't have problem with communications. So basically, many students they get hired before even they finish their program. So as soon as they finish their program, they get. Of course, I'm talking about the brilliant engineers. Not everyone will be able to leave the country and get and land a very good job, but many of them are. Many of them are landing very good jobs, especially
Because
in
I'm just familiar, because here we have the H-1B visa and stuff like that. And so is it kind of the equivalent of that?
no, it's more like in France, it's more like work permit. So as soon as you get the job offer, you just get a work permit. So it's easier. The process is easier. It doesn't need. I'm not really familiar with H1B, but I think it needs more like paperwork and offer, and the company has to work for it, and lawyers and stuff like that. But I think in France it's easier. So you just if you land a job and you get a job offer, you will get a visa, get a work permit, and start working. And I think if you work for them like more than 2 years or something like that, you get something like permanent, like a green card and things like that.
Okay. So, I appreciate everything and the time that you've given us. I will try to say this correctly. Je suis désolé, mon ami. So,
That's
shukran,
perfect.
shukran, Yvette. Merci beaucoup for coming here and enlightening us about the cybersecurity and technology landscape in Tunisia. And I'm hoping that this dialogue creates a lot more interest for students, professionals to think outside the box and do a lot more things with African countries. And from my own perspective, I've been to Tunisia a couple times now. Every time I've went, I've received immense hospitality thanks to you and your family and friends. And again, many thanks.
Thanks for having me.